Dear ladies and gentlemen, hi everyone. I'm Janina Petrovska, RLP lawyers Liechtenstein. We would like to talk today with you about how to choose a country for your blockchain project. Namely also for a security token offering for STO. Because for a lot of projects it's a big issue where to incorporate, where to start. Because I hear that, I don't know, Malta is crypto friendly, or Britain, or Estonia, and where to start with, they don't really know. So we prepared a sort of checklist for choosing a country for your blockchain project, and also especially for your security token offering. The first point and the first thing that you have to start with are your target investors or your target audience, which you would like to work with. The rule is quite simple. Normally, to work with most of the investors, you have to look where they are located. If they are mainly in Europe, then most likely you have to work from Europe. If they are US, then definitely you have to incorporate there and to receive all the regulatory approvals and licenses in the US. If investors are in Asia, it also depends. From time to time you're able to work with accredited investors both with US and Asia if you have an entity in Europe, for example, but it depends on the case. When working in Asia, most likely you would need an entity in Asia and also approvals from regulators anyway. The second point in our checklist is that you have to check whether the country has special legislation for blockchain projects, because some of the countries don't, or they might have just guidelines from regulators, which is also good if they have guidelines how to apply actual laws, existing laws to blockchain projects. If they have even a special legislation, which Liechtenstein does, for example, with the Blockchain Act, which is going to be enforced also in Switzerland in regard to DLT securities, it is even better because it gives more certainty to the project and to the investors in regard to worst case scenario. What is going to happen if something goes wrong? Then mostly all those rules are really important, and if a legislation or a court practice or even guidelines do not exist, no one can really estimate the risk. What would happen if something goes wrong, if a worst case scenario happens? The third point in our checklist is attraction of STOs. It could be also attraction of any other sort of blockchain project, but especially for STOs, most of them require having a prospectus, both in US and Europe and also in Asia. Up to a certain amount, normally you're allowed to raise money without a prospectus. From time to time, or dealing with certain exemptions like accredited investors, you might be allowed to raise money without a prospectus. But anyway, it is important that a certain country, a regulator, has already has worked with prospectuses for security token offering, and then they know how to approve them, they know what it is. And it gives also more certainty for you as a project. You know what would be approximately the conditions, what the regulator asks for, what is the timeline. So this is also really important. The next point is overall cost for running a business, including taxes. It is really important in most of the countries require today that you have at least a local director in a company, that you have a real office, that you have some staff depending on what sort of activities you are going to pursue, you are going to do. And in this regard, you have to calculate all of these costs before you start to incorporate, before you start your business. All the costs for licensing, all the costs for staff, all the taxes, etc. At least approximately would be great to calculate in advance to be able to see how much it's going to cost you to realize this business model in this specific country, because it might turn out then that the cost for running a business in certain country will really ruin your business model. It would not allow you to earn money. Next point is you have to look what are the general conditions for doing business, because doing a blockchain business or conducting a security token offering cannot be separated from doing business in the country. Actually, what is that to do business in the country? Normally you have to look at rankings. For example, those countries where we work, like Switzerland and Liechtenstein, they have really high rankings for doing business conditions, for economic or political stability, and that also plays a very important role for starting a business, for conducting security token offering, especially. Moreover, when looking at rankings, you also have to talk to the projects which are already on site. We call it user experience of a certain country, jurisdiction, certain state, what are the state services, how the regulator works, how the ecosystem around the blockchain IT area works, whether it's possible to find, I don't know, co-workings, how lawyers work, for instance, auditors, accounting, etc. You really need to understand what would be your user experience. So yeah, just talk to the projects which are already there. Normally they're not really honest when they write press releases. They're really positive about the country, but then if you meet, for example, I don't know, in Davos or at some other events and talk with them, it turns out that the experience wasn't that rosy, and they just do not share it publicly, but that is true. And then you have to, in general, look at the reputation of the country. It's actually it is already reflected in all the rankings of economic, political system and doing business. But still, if you talk to people, they say that certain countries, thanks to their mentality, they provide a high quality of regulation, of legal system, of doing business conditions, and some other countries are more like doing a lot of great marketing, but then the delivery itself is really different, and the overall reputation, especially for advanced stage projects, is really important, and that's why they have to think where they incorporate their holding companies, their major entities. That is also a very important point to consider. Thank you everyone for your attention. This was a checklist for choosing a country for your blockchain projects, and especially for security token offering. I'm Janina Petrovska, RLP Lawyers Liechtenstein. Thanks a lot.